Good afternoon, everybody. We're so excited for today's Lunch and Learn. So last week we were able to go ahead and get to know a little bit better our AAGs, Assistant Attorney Generals, Mr. Roderick Begay and also Paul Spruan. This week we're excited to go ahead and interview and get to know a little bit more of Mr. Mel Rodas. He is our Assistant Attorney General for the Tax and Finance Unit, and also Miss Catherine Belowski. She is our Assistant Attorney General for the Economic Development Unit. Um, my name is Heather Claw. I'm the Deputy Attorney General for the Department of Justice. I'm Kia Ani, born for Class Chi, my Chage are Torachini, and my Nellies are Touchini. And I'm so excited to be here and be able to have this conversation with Mel and Catherine. So I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. Catherine, let's go ahead and start with you.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Catherine Balzowski. As Deputy stated, I am the Assistant Attorney General for the Economic Community Development Unit. I've been on a couple of these in the past, so I feel like people may have seen my face before. I am originally from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I did my law school at the University of Minnesota, and I got a Master's of Law in Indigenous Peoples Law and Policy at the University of Arizona. And it was during the time that I was enrolled in that program at University of Arizona that I was fortunate enough to take a tribal law program that was taught by former Supreme Court Justice Ray Austin. And that really got me interested in working in the Navajo Nation legal system. So after law school, I worked at Nevada Legal Services for 2 years up in Reno, Nevada, working with the Paiute, Shoshone, and Washoe tribes in the state. And then I came to the Navajo Nation Department of Justice in 2013, where I worked at the litigation unit with AAG Paul Spruan, and then moved over to the economic development unit, which I've been here for almost 5-6 years now. So yeah, it's a little bit about me. Currently reside here in Gallup, New Mexico, and I have 3 small humans that keep me pretty busy.
Thank you, Catherine. Mel?
Good afternoon. My name is Mel Rodas. I'm the Assistant AG of the Tax and Finance Unit of Navajo DOJ. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. Grew up in Phoenix. I was born in Pennsylvania. My father is an immigrant from the Philippines. My mother is Irish Italian and is from rural Pennsylvania. I have 4 siblings. I went to law school at the University of Arizona in Tucson. I graduated in 2003, and then I also got a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Arizona in the Scottsdale campus in 2009. And I came to the Navajo Nation Department of Justice in 2016. I started out in the Economic and Community Development Unit, and then I transferred over to the Tax and Finance Unit several months later. So I started out as a principal attorney in TFU, and then in the summer of 2020, I became the Assistant Attorney General.
Wow, thank you guys. I didn't realize, I appreciate listening to this and having an opportunity to get to know you guys myself, because, we kind of start off with just being attorneys and not necessarily having an understanding of the backgrounds of what I didn't realize that, Catherine, that you work for another tribe. So I'm glad to hear that too. Thank you. Okay, so you guys shared a little bit about your background. I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about your guys's, what guided your career path and your decision to go to law school. Part of this opportunity that we want to take is helping to reach out to students, to not only Navajos but younger generations who are thinking of going to law school and taking the path to be tribal or even attorneys in general. So we can go ahead and start off with Catherine. What guided your careers and what made your decisions to go to law school?
So when I was an undergrad, I did my undergrad at Cornell University in New York. And when I was an undergrad, I did an anthroarchaeology double major with a concentration in Indian studies. And after I graduated from undergrad, during that time, I thought I was going to be a Mayan archaeologist. So I did field work in Central America and did, learned how to read Mayan hieroglyphs and thought that was going to be my future. And then I actually did it for a while after I graduated and realized that it wasn't quite the life I was hoping to lead for. While it's definitely fun and Indiana Jonesy in your 20s, I kind of saw that was something that was going to may not be Indiana Jones life may not be fun come 30s and 40s. So I ended up working for the Park Service for a little bit as a in their various visitor centers, one in Bandelier, New Mexico, and one in Haleakala in Hawaii. And so during that time, I, decided it was during that time that I decided to go to law school because I thought it was something that I would be able to provide better assistance to people as a lawyer. I feel like public service has always been a really big focus in just my family and the community that I grew up in. And so I saw law as a way to provide public service. And so I went to law school, had the great chance of, having some really good Indian law professors at University of Minnesota with John Burroughs, and then going to U of A and being taught by the Indian law professors down there. And it was something that I thought was just very interesting to me. It was a topic that was area of law that I could get passionate about and really be excited to work in. So I think it was really, I knew I liked the area when I started law school, but I really think it was being able to do that master's and really see, what the Indian law field looked like, both at the international, national, and tribal level, that helped me be like, this is an area that I can see myself working in for a long period of time.
So what was your thoughts before you came, or how did you come up to be here at the Department of Justice, the Navajo Nation Department of Justice?
I really credit Ray Austin's class at the University of Arizona. He used the Navajo Nation as his example when he was teaching tribal law of how a tribal nation can develop its legal jurisprudence and its legal system. And he did it he taught that class in such a way that really highlighted, the work that the Navajo Nation had done to create this whole legal system that was its own. And so, looking at the Navajo Nation case law that had come out of the Supreme Court in the 90s, late 90s and late 80s, early 90s, and even the early 2000s was, showing like the extent that the Navajo people and the Navajo government were doing to say, like, we're not just going to cut and paste state and federal law. We're going to create our own laws, and we're going to make law that looks more the way we think it should look as Navajo people. And I thought that was very inspiring, especially when you work with, when I worked with some other tribes, especially smaller tribes, you see a lot of other tribes, just adopting jurisprudence from other jurisdictions, because maybe it makes the most sense for them, or, maybe it's just kind of the path of least resistance. But when I was notified that there was an opportunity to work at Navajo, I really wanted to have that chance to work in a tribal government that's actually making laws making laws and practicing law in a way that worked for its people. And it's just, as sometimes stressful as it can be working for the Navajo Nation government, I really think that it's there's nowhere else in the world that, you could work where you can be an in-house tribal attorney for a tribe that's going to do so much law create law and practice law in its own vision. So everything from procurement to, uranium transport to, elections, like the laws are done and implemented in a way that then, in a complete Navajo way. So I find that I don't think I could go anywhere else and get this experience. And that's really what drew me to Navajo.
Thank you. Catherine, I appreciate your response on that. Mel, same question. What guided your path and made the decision to go to law school?
I knew that I was going to be a lawyer from age 11. So my dad my dad would always encourage myself and my siblings to pursue education as the path forward, which is pretty common, pretty typical for immigrant families, immigrant parents. They want their children to study. So my dad would always tell us, you're such smart kids. You could be whatever you want in the world, a doctor or a lawyer. So those were our two choices. And, for a while I said, yeah, I'm going to be a doctor. My dad was a doctor and I wanted to be like my dad. And then I realized that I was very focused on fairness and justice as a child, still am. And I would argue. I could argue with the devil. So my dad said, I think you should be an attorney. I think maybe you might want to be a judge someday or a lawyer. And I said, yeah, that makes sense. So from age 11, I decided I was going to be a lawyer. And I never looked back. When I went to college, I studied political science, and I had the opportunity to take some classes on international human rights. And in that context, I learned a little bit about human rights issues for Indigenous people around the globe. And it was they were international human rights courses. And then when I went to law school at the University of Arizona, I took a couple more international human rights courses, international human rights of Indigenous peoples. And then I took Indian law courses from James Anaya and Rob Williams, for example. And I got super interested in Indian law. I made friends with colleagues, other law students who were in NALSA. And I said, this is super interesting. And so I joined NALSA. And then I did a summer internship at White Mountain Apache in White River. And I did an internship for White Mountain Apache Legal Services and worked on public defense, criminal public defense and family law issues and consumer law issues. And that was super interesting. And then I also concentrated on immigration law when I was in law school. When I graduated, I went to community legal services in Phoenix, and I represented migrant and seasonal farm workers. And then after that, I went to the International Rescue Committee, and I was an attorney and program manager for an anti-human trafficking program. And I represented victims of human trafficking and debt bondage and domestic servitude. And then I went into private practice. During that time, I got my MBA, and I thought I wanted to switch gears. And I decided that an MBA would be useful to a tribal government. And I started looking around at tribes in the Phoenix area. And then I realized that there were multiple opportunities with the Navajo Nation DOJ. And that was in 2016. And so I was very fortunate to be hired on at Navajo. And I thought with my MBA, I would be a good fit in the Economic and Community Development Unit. And then I realized that the Tax and Finance Unit was doing really important work with economic development, but kind of on a higher level. Not a higher level. That doesn't sound right, but at a different level, a different aspect of work with Navajo Nation funds and finances than what was happening in Economic and Community Development. I got very interested in that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that to sound like a comparison. ECD's work is super important. TFU's work is important. It's just a little bit different.
So sometimes you find your niche,
I found my niche in TFU. Yeah.
Discovering different areas. Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with you. Mm-hmm. And I think I appreciate both of your guys' response, because we agree 100%. The one thing about Navajo Nation, that it is such a huge nation, which we're blessed with so the population, but not only that, but with land. And we do have resources. I think a lot of our leadership in the past has set Navajo Nation up in order to go ahead and have bigger opportunities for financing, and sophisticated financing, and also the economic development possibilities too as well. I know there's still challenges that we face regarding both of those subjects, but I think we're getting there, and that it is exciting. So I definitely appreciate your guys' enthusiasm and seeing that. So great. Um, you guys talked a little bit about how you came interested in coming here for the Navajo Nation. I wanted, and both of you have been here for quite some time now, in order to go ahead and get to know and maybe even call Navajo Nation home. And I would like to go ahead and ask, through the years that you've had here serving the Navajo Nation and its people and resources, maybe what are some of the initiatives, projects, or even cases that you have been involved with that had an impact in your, decisions or your professional career, or just something that meant a little bit something to you? And I also want to look at maybe not necessarily just the success of things, and even sometimes failures, because I think our failures are ones that also make us so strong. So is there any type of initiative or project that impacted you while you're here on the nation? And let's go ahead and start with you, Mel.
Thanks, Deputy. Um, all of the work that I've been engaged in has been super interesting in TFU. I've been here for almost 8 years, but I would have to say the work that I had the privilege of participating in with CARES funding and with fiscal recovery funds under ARPA has been probably the most challenging and the most rewarding work that I've done. And I find it to be important in the sense that it's important to me in the sense that I feel like I can make a difference in the lives of the Navajo people by making a contribution on a day-to-day basis in helping to move the nation forward with supporting decision-making processes about how the funds will be utilized, allocated, budgeted for, expended, with legislation, with assisting with contracts and things of that nature. So in the process, in the fiscal recovery fund process, I did eligibility determination reviews. I helped to establish different procedures and things of that nature. So it was really an honor to be able to work with leadership on fiscal recovery fund issues. And I feel like we're more than halfway through that process now. All of the funds have been allocated, a large portion of the funds have been obligated, and programs are in the process of expending funds and implementing projects. And that's super exciting to me to see that funding is being used for the benefit of the Navajo people. And I hope that that the funds will really make a difference in the lives of Navajo people in terms of bringing services and infrastructure that's so desperately needed on the nation.
And I think that, when people think we just need money, and when we have an opportunity to have so much money or given so much money with an opportunity, it's difficult because you're going to have to figure out how to utilize the money and how to move the money. And I don't think a lot of people understand the challenge of doing that. So definitely appreciate you being there at the times that we got the CARES Act and the FRF, the funding that we had from the federal government with the CARES Act and the FRF. What? Oh, for the ARPA money that we got from the government.
Fiscal recovery, yes.
And it's definitely a challenge because everybody wants to do good, It's just getting everybody together to figure out and agree on how to go ahead and prioritize and move things. And that's not an easy task. So thank you so much for being there at that time for that. Catherine, same question to you. What are some of the initiatives or projects that maybe you've been involved that stand out and maybe help you maybe think differently about how to make decisions as you move forward, or what's cultivating you to being a better Navajo tribal attorney?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. I think kind of going off what Mel said, I think my work during the COVID period and CARES Act probably stands out the most. That was just such an incredibly trying time, and it was it was a very unique time to work for the Navajo Nation, not necessarily in a positive way, but it was probably, I thought I was going to go home and like bake sourdough bread for like 3 weeks and then like come back to work and be refreshed. And then the reality of the situation hit. And it was, as I think all of us on this call remember, it was just nonstop for months, right? While we tried to help the nation try to figure out how to respond to the pandemic and, not only dealing with all the COVID stuff that came with the pandemic, but then also trying to help the government and its leaders and its programs, do whatever legal work needed to be done to get the money expended and get responses out to the people. And so it was incredibly rewarding in the sense that I think that we were successful in getting some stuff done. Probably I definitely feel like we learned a lot from that also, because there were things that, the normal way of doing business kind of went out the window for us. And I think it was very eye-opening. It was a positive. It was also like something that really changed my perspective on how to work for the government and, how can we, things that, before COVID, we may not have thought were possible, all of a sudden became possible, or we figured out ways to make them possible. And because you had no choice. You were in a pandemic and things had to happen. And so it really taught me how to think outside the box and outside the normal, like, four walls that I think that I had previously been working in as a government attorney, where, sometimes as government attorneys, we get into our boxes and we're like, you have to check this box and then this box, and nothing can be done until this one box is checked. And sometimes during COVID, you really had to be like, boxes out the window, boxes are gone. There are no boxes. We live in a boxless environment and we just have to figure out how to get it done. And so, but I think that also helped, that carried past COVID too, of, well, in the sense of maybe these boxes that we thought were so stringent are more malleable than we thought, and we can actually move them around a little bit and be more responsive to the clients and the needs of the Navajo people, which I think at the end of the day, right, it's like we want, obviously, I think both me and Mel, we want the Navajo government, want to protect the Navajo government, but we also don't want to hinder things that need to get done. And so I think that's been great, especially under, the current leadership and Deputy yourself, like just trying to help us think like, how can we do things in a way that we're not just the Department of No, which I know is probably on a t-shirt or a bumper sticker somewhere, but, how can we help programs achieve the goals they want to get done? And even if that maybe they can't do it in the way they want to do it, but how can we then help them get to the goal that they want to achieve? Because at the end of the day, we're just the advisors and we're just here to advise and try to help them achieve, whatever project or, whatever vision they have to try to help make the lives of the Navajo people better.
No, I appreciate your statements on that. I think a lot of the times that, a lot of people don't realize is that when we do necessarily, like, a no needs to come, or let's kind of rethink that, it's basically the attorneys following the laws that are already in place. I know a lot of times that people have a complaint that, oh, why are you telling us we can't do that? And it's not necessarily the attorneys saying that they can't do that. It's the law that we're following. But I appreciate the comment that you're saying is let's go ahead and problem solve, let's see what your intentions are, because the majority of the time, I think, not majority, maybe i would I would say all the time, programs and leadership, they want to do what's the best for the people. They want to be able to make improvements and have life easier for their constituents. Let's just figure out how we can assist them to accomplish those things within, the either the regulations given to us by the federal government, or even with the Navajo Nation Council and the laws that they pass. So definitely appreciate that. And one comment that I would love to say is, at the time me coming in as a Deputy Attorney General within the Department of Justice, thank you both for being so more, every time I challenge you guys to do something, you guys are very open to challenge, to rise to that challenge. Why do we have to do it that way? Mel, why are you saying that? What was the past? And Catherine, why can't we do it that way? And I really, truly appreciate the both of you, because I feel that you guys don't necessarily roll your eyes and say this because this is how it's always done. You guys rise to the challenge to say, okay, you know what, you're right. Maybe we didn't think about it, and maybe we can think about it again. So I definitely want to appreciate and tell as a manager, of part of the manager as a Department of Justice, that's what I appreciate from the both of you. So thank you for that. And I have to agree. I think COVID, having to deal with a pandemic, just kind of have made everybody have to rise to the occasion. How do we figure this out so that our people are safe? So thank you both for being here in order to go ahead and accomplish those things. Question that I want to go to now is a little bit more current. What do you think within your department, your units that you manage, what are you think the most important legal issues for the nation right now? And let me go ahead and gear that question to Catherine first.
So the Economic Community Development Unit does a broad range of stuff, like all the units, I guess. So we work with, just to give people some kind of context, we work with the Division of Community Development, with the construction projects that the nation does. We work with Division of Economic Development to advise them on their business, the business work that they're doing. We worked with Navajo Gaming, Regulatory Office. We also look at the state and federal voting issues on the nation. So, and then, as needed, we assist with some of the tax work on the nation. And so I'd say that right now, some of the big things that we're really working on is trying to, two things was probably the construction projects on the Navajo Nation, which really took center stage with the ARPA legislation and the FRF funding that the nation received. And so really been probably the biggest thing has been working with both chapters and the Division of Community Development to try to figure out how to get those monies expended and how to get that money, those projects done. And so I think right now that's one of, even though a lot of those projects have now been moved over to general funds, so they don't carry a lot of the deadlines, requirements that when they were FRF projects, but still continuing to work on the remaining FRF projects. And then also working just with the communities that now have identified, a large amount of projects that they need done, and how can we get those out in a timely manner so they don't languish around for years, and trying to help the division figure that out, and provide them the resources they need to be able to get those projects out for the people. And then the other one I would say is working with the Division of Economic Development to update what is the business site leasing plan for the nation, because I think, the Navajo Nation was a leader when they passed those business site leasing regulations back in the mid and late 2000s, but they haven't been updated since. And I think it's time to with the updating of those, really trying to get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and hurdles that businesses face opening on the Navajo Nation and trying to help streamline that process, which, we can just trying to make a more friendlier and easier to navigate environment for people, both Navajo and not Navajos, that want to do business on here, and providing those opportunities for them.
You mentioned about the voting, especially because this is an election year for the United States, for president and Congress. How is the Department of Justice or your unit assisting with the voting situations? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we did, we did a lot of work during COVID when the COVID was happening, and working really closely with the states and the counties to try to figure out how to adjust and make voting easier, access to voting easier for the Navajo Nation, especially mail-in ballots and early voting, because people were, traditionally Navajos vote in person, but during COVID, there was a lot more concern about voting in person. So trying to make sure that Navajos had access to the other voting options, like mailing in their ballot or dropping their ballot off at a ballot box. But I think for this election, with COVID a little more calmed down, even though, people say it's making a comeback this fall. But we're really just continuing those relationships with the counties and the Secretary of State's offices in the various states and jurisdictions to make sure that, things are just moving smoothly, that people have access, like people have access to the polling places, that information is getting out in a timely manner. Also making sure that, that people aren't being turned away at the polls. I think one of the biggest issues we have on the Navajo Nation, especially in Apache County, is that the use of precinct voting, which people can get really, I've seen people get very frustrated in the past voting, especially in Apache County, because they are only all precinct-based county that we have, and people being sent to multiple polling locations. So we really try to make sure that people aren't, everyone, just get on my soapbox here, everyone should be given an option at every Apache County precinct polling location to vote at a vote machine behind the poll workers. So if you go to the wrong precinct in Apache County, and they try to send you away, please be like, well, what's that little machine over there? Can I just vote on that? And they should say, yes, that's fine, because that's what the Secretary of State office has told them to do. So really just making sure that we really want to make sure that Navajo voters are provided the same easy access to ballots that as if they were voting in any other place in Arizona. So, and I really appreciate the work from our counties, Navajo and Coconino County. They work really hard to try to make sure that all those issues are, the Navajo voters are really provided those same opportunities. But we can always do better. And we always try to make sure that if we do hear that people are having any kind of difficulties in any aspect of the voting process, whether it be registration or trying to cast a ballot, that we try to work with our partners at the county level to make sure those ballots are counted and cast.
And I think, talking about a public announcement, I think this is a perfect time to remind everybody, especially those who are just turning 18 and have an opportunity to get in there and register to vote. Because the reality is the Navajo Nation's vote can swing elections. We have enough people to go ahead and make a difference. So definitely encourage everybody who's just are becoming of age, or has just become, or going to be coming of age, to be able to go ahead and vote, to go ahead and register and get out there to the vote. So definitely thank you, Catherine, with your guys' efforts in assisting Navajos and really anybody to go ahead and make sure that their votes count. So I appreciate that response. Thank you. So Mel, same question to you. Is what are some of the important issues at TFU right now?
I think the most important issue right now would be the comprehensive budget. Mm-hmm. The comprehensive budget process has been a little bit different this year than in past years. TFU has been advising on that, and I've been working recently with the Office of Legislative Counsel on developing legislation for a continuing resolution legislation, and that's been very interesting, and I think a positive collaboration between DOJ and OLC to get that done, so that if a comprehensive budget is not achieved, then the alternative could be a continuing resolution, so that the Navajo Nation government can continue operations at the beginning of the fiscal year, absent a comprehensive budget. And then in the following months, if a CR is passed in the following months, leadership would work on developing a comprehensive budget. So that's been a very interesting issue for my unit in the past few months, this budget season. Another interesting issue that I've been working on is, helping leadership to think through the idea of developing a fund that we've been referring to as the 521 fund. The concept is that money was moved from the fiscal recovery funds from ARPA into the general fund, into a reserve account, where the Navajo Nation used fiscal recovery funds to reimburse itself for FRF eligible expenditures of general funds, and then to take those general funds and establish a new fund that could be used for financing of future capital projects. And that is, to me, a very exciting proposition. And I feel fortunate to be able to work on that issue. I sincerely hope that moves forward, because using over $500 million to grow, grow the principal by generating investment income, using that income for debt service on loans or bonds, and then using the loan or bond financing to pay for capital projects into the future without ever having to touch the principal of the fund. And then repeating the process over and over again, and just continuing to use that funding source to finance capital projects. So it's not just a one-shot deal like CARES or FRF was. Those funding sources were blessings to the nation, but that funding is short-term. And so the idea of this 521 fund and this, to have future financing that the nation can repeat for generations to come is a very exciting idea for me.
I think it's definitely innovating and exciting. I 100% agree with you. I know I have a few other colleagues on the outside working for other tribes who approached me and said, "Hey, what is Navajo doing, and how did they figure that out?" So I think, to go along with what the comments that you guys made is that something that I'm proud of is I think in a lot of different cases, Navajo Nation always leads or is the flagship within the tribal communities on different projects or innovative thinking. So I have to agree with you, Mel, that 521 funding is really exciting. And I think that's something that us as Navajo people should be proud that we do have people thinking innovatively like that, or just thinking like, as smart investors. I know a lot of people think that Navajo doesn't necessarily, how do we treat the money? Because there's a lot of things going out there that, they're wasting the money, they're losing the money. But I think majority of it was that we could absolutely say no. We are looking at the future. We are looking at how to utilize smartly to be more financially responsible for the money that we do get. So I definitely appreciate you being a part of that. I do think that it also helps to have leadership in the office of the controller to think innovatively of that sort, and also leadership on both sides of the road, at the president's office as well as in the council. I know there's just a lot of times that they disagree on things, but it helps that when they understand and want the same thing. It's just sometimes it's a challenge to get there, um, in the same way, to meeting the, what is that saying, meeting of the minds of, I think they want the same thing, it's just getting to the meeting of the minds of how to achieve that. So I definitely know that you are a great representative to give the legal and understanding and hear both sides, legislators as well as the president. So I think there's huge comfort, especially you, Mel, in being in those situations. So thank you for that. Let's see where the next question, you guys. Where do you guys see your units in the next 5 or 10 years? Or maybe where do you want as leaderships? Because you guys are the leaders and managers of the units that you guys are in charge of. Where do you see your units, or where do you want to see your units in the next 5 to 10 years? And let's go ahead and start with Catherine with that question.
Gosh, ideally, I would love to see one of the really great up and coming Navajo attorneys that are out there come back and take my job for me and lead this unit. I feel like there's so much, I know so many great young Navajo attorneys who are out there in the world doing good work, or who are in law school right now. And my hope is that this unit becomes, that we aren't just, processing leases, but we're also being innovative thinkers, and we're helping the clients do things that are innovative, and that work, coupled with not just looking at land leases, but also financing options, and trying to become a little more savvy on how the Navajo Nation does development and construction on the nation, that it will entice these amazing Navajo attorneys that are out there to come back and want to be a part of it. And so my hope is really just, I feel really fortunate because I do have a great staff of attorneys right now, and have worked outside in the private sector for other tribes, and who've been able to come back and are now working for the Navajo Nation, and they're using knowledge that they learned in these other areas working for other clients, and they come back and now they're like, well, what if the nation could do this, or what about this, because they have that other outside world experience. And I only think that makes the Navajo Nation stronger. And so I really appreciate my staff attorneys, because I think they're, they make the unit great. And so I hope that we kind of continue moving in that direction, and really, not only are we experts on how to process a lease through Navajo Nation law, but we'll also become experts on how to advise our clients on how to do like new market tax credits, and just how to take advantage of other financing and dual taxation issues out there. So that's my hope for my unit. I hope that in 10 years that they're one of those amazing Navajo attorneys is on this call talking about the good work that the Navajo Nation's doing to help create a more business friendly and construction friendly environment.
I'm so happy to hear that too, and I 100% agree with you regarding the outside the box thinking, and how can we learn as a tribe to take advantage of these initiatives. I mean, the new market credit, I have to share with you, is when I first came on and Catherine was in a meeting, and one of our programs wanted to do the new market credits, and those are unique because they have limitations that your government cannot take a part of it. But sometimes if you're creative, you can create sub companies in order to go ahead and work through to accomplish what is needed in a community. And I remember, like for instance, with NTUA taking a part of those learned how to go ahead and figure out how to take advantage of those new market credits by developing and partnering with other companies. I guess we call them like sub companies. And sometimes you have to be creative. It's leasing, subleasing, subleasing. And every time that somebody brought up a sublease, Catherine went lower in her seat and her face, but now I feel that, talking about it just now, you were so comfortable with that. So yay. Thank you for that, Catherine. And that's what I'm talking about, is being broader, looking at a little bit more, seeing the possibilities. And we may not be able to achieve it now, but we're not going to be scared of asking questions to figure out if that's something that we can take a part of. So definitely so glad to hear that. Thank you, Catherine. Mel, same question for you. Where do you see the tax and finance unit in the next 5 to 10 years?
Like Catherine, I would love to see new attorneys, both young attorneys and even mid-career attorneys joining Navajo DOJ and joining the tax and finance unit. We do need attorneys. And in terms of priorities for the unit, one priority Catherine already hit on is dual taxation. Assisting the nation's leadership and assisting Office of the Navajo Tax Commission and addressing the issue of dual taxation, whether that's legislatively at the federal level or negotiating IGAs with states, things of that nature, in order to increase intergovernmental agreements. I apologize. Tax compacts with states, and in order to increase the Navajo Nation's tax revenue generation, and also to encourage economic development on the nation by eliminating the burden on businesses who invest here, so that they don't have the burden of dual taxation and consumers don't have the burden of dual taxation. And so people are then doing business on the nation. That would be one priority. Another, I really think that the nation could streamline the comprehensive budget process. I think we could shorten it. I think that we could think of ways to make it more simplified. And that would involve amendments to the Appropriations Act and the Budget Instruction Manual. So I'd like to be supportive in my role. If that turns out to be a priority of leadership, I'd love to assist on that. And then I think that bond financing, I touched on this earlier, but I think that bond financing is something that the nation's leadership is interested in, and that the tax and finance unit can assist on moving forward.
Thank you, Mel. This has been such a great opportunity and I hope everybody can definitely see what I know I appreciate with you guys and some of and majority of all of our attorneys here on Department of Justice and Navajo Nation. But I want to ask you guys a question, especially if we're wanting to go ahead and attract people, attorneys, like Catherine, you've been very successful in recruiting attorneys that have actually worked for private law firms and bringing them in. And it's a challenge. I mean, Mel, to, with the taxing and everything of that, getting more MBAs, attorneys or business tax minded attorneys to come in to be recruited here at the Department of Justice. What, if you could give us some ideas that you guys might have in recruiting in your particular units, and what has been successful? Catherine?
Thanks, Heather. I think what's been successful is really the work, in the sense that the attorneys that I have working for me, I mean, they're passionate about working for the Navajo Nation, right? Some of them aren't Navajo, some are, but they all want to do the work. Like they love they love being able to work for the Department of Justice and work and assist the Navajo Nation government clients. Like they find it interesting because, like I said, you can't do this work really anywhere else. And so I think that, attorneys coming from other tribes, they still aren't able to get the experience and work on the projects at the level that they are here at DOJ. So I think that's one thing that helps attract attorneys. I think also the, being flexible with our attorneys and just understanding that work isn't life, and help allowing our attorneys the ability to have some work-life balance, I think really helps, especially if they're coming from outside law firms where maybe that work-life balance wasn't possible. And so being able to do good work, like do the good work here, like they were doing in other sectors, but being able to provide them a lifestyle that allows them to like be with their families more is really helpful. I think one of the reasons that we have a hard time attracting, especially Navajo attorneys, young attorneys, is our starting salary is very low comparatively. So like if an attorney is straight out of law school and they have student debts or just trying to start their careers and their lives, we don't really provide a lot of financial resources for them to do that. And so attorney could work for us, or they could work for Pueblo in Albuquerque and earn $25,000 more a year, and I don't think I could blame any attorney who's starting out, especially when they're having to pay, bills and kind of get their feet under them. Sometimes money is a financial driver. So I think that providing that, especially, I would say, I think that's hard for the newest attorneys. So I think really being able to provide new attorneys straight out of law school, being more competitive especially with other tribes out there, would really help attract them when they're trying to decide who they want to work for when they graduate.
I definitely appreciate you bringing that up because there are some challenges, especially being a rural tribe. Sometimes we have to think outside the box of bringing people in and retaining them, because I think you're right. The work, once they get in and they see how interesting the work can be, that it can keep them, but it's attracting them to come back home. So I 100% agree. It's facilities. We don't have the proper facilities. We don't have housing. And then, some of the things that we can change at this point is salaries. So I appreciate your input and your honesty on that too as well. Mel, same question.
Thanks, Deputy. I think I agree with everything that Catherine was saying. And then just to add on, I think that, we really want to encourage new attorneys and mid-level career attorneys to consider Navajo DOJ. I think that there are so many opportunities to grow and learn new things with Navajo DOJ, and it's such a unique experience because Navajo DOJ is big enough that you get to specialize in certain areas, and yet there's so much going on with the nation, and the nation has so many legal needs that attorneys in one unit work collaboratively with attorneys in other units, and we have the chance to work together in collaboration and grow our skill set. And my prior AAG, Jana Werner, told me when I was just starting out at Navajo that this job is as big as you make it, and if you put your whole self into your job at Navajo DOJ, your position will grow with you, and you will grow with your position. Like there are no limits to what areas you can get into, what you can learn about, because the nation needs so much assistance, and has such diverse legal needs. And so I guess I want attorneys out there and law students out there to know that the opportunities with Navajo DOJ are very interesting, and it's rewarding and exciting work to do. So Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Um, and this has been such, and I have to say, like, again, I have to express to you guys my excitement, my pleasure just to get to know you guys and to work alongside you guys. And it's definitely very rewarding on my part as a manager to, and helps me in my office as attorney general and myself to know that we can rely on such seasoned attorney, and to actually that understand the topics and answers the questions, because a lot of times when coming in and making the decision to be the deputy attorney general, to accept that position, what brought comfort to me, because I can be honest with you, I was really nervous about having to take on that type of responsibility, but to be reminded and to understand each and every one of your guys' units have a capable, very capable manager. And I wouldn't be there having to make those. I can lean on you guys to help us and assist us to make those decisions. So I know the Attorney General and myself truly appreciate the both of you and all of the managers. But thank you guys for sharing your stories, sharing your experience with the Navajo Nation and everybody that's tuning in today. So I appreciate it. But I want to go ahead and give you guys an opportunity, maybe a minute, to go ahead and, just for some closing remarks on your behalf. Let's go ahead and start with you, Mel.
Thanks, Deputy. I just want to thank you and Catherine, and also thank the viewers in today's presentation. And I think in my closing remarks, I would like to recognize Mr. Troy Cook, who we recently lost. Our deputy chief prosecutor passed away, and I just want to acknowledge him, the work that he's done for the nation, and many blessings and love to his family and loved ones. So our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family. So thank you. And I also wanted to acknowledge that the Tax and Finance Unit lost our treasurer, Coretta Keto, this year. And she was the glue that held Tax and Finance together, our senior legal secretary. And she was a very dear friend of mine. And so my love goes out to her. I appreciate her to no end. And I love her family. And I want to send my support and regards to them, and for them to know that Navajo DOJ is behind them. So thank you.
Thank you, Mel. I appreciate those words and those remarks. Catherine? You're on mute, Catherine.
I don't think I can follow Mel's closing remarks. I think they were wonderful, and I echo them. And I would just, note that I really think that the attorneys at DOJ do a fantastic job, and it's a hard job to do. And I really appreciate everyone that I get to work with in this department. And so just, yeah. Thanks. And thanks to you, Deputy. Really appreciate your leadership too for these past couple of years.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you both. And thank you, Mel, definitely for of the words about Troy. What a wonderful human being. And I think, and with Coretta too as well, I think this also shows the heart that we have as a Department of Justice, how we have as a family, and our cohorts that we have. And our coworkers, they become family because we work together for so long and wanting to accomplish and do the best that we can for the Navajo Nation and for the leadership. So thank you guys so much for sharing these things and taking the time to sit down and talk with me. Like I said, I definitely have been and I have been enjoying these opportunities to sit down and just have a conversation for you guys right now. We do cover other specific questions, because I know there's a few questions that were coming up. We do cover some of those items in other interviews, but this particular one, I wanted to go ahead and make sure that we had just a casual conversation with our attorney generals, our assistant attorney generals, and give them the opportunity and the public an opportunity to get to know who who does the work here at the Department of Justice. So thank you guys for that, and I appreciate it. And everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next week. Next week we will be have an opportunity to go ahead and meet LaTanya Vicente Johnson. She's their Assistant Attorney General for the HSGU unit, and I'm trying to think of the whole thing, Health and Social Services and Governments unit, and Miss Veronica Blackhat. She is our Assistant Attorney General for our Natural Resource unit as well. And right now she's also covering the Water Rights unit as well on that. So we look forward to getting to know them too as well next week. All right, thank you both very much, and everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you.